There we go.
Hey everybody, what's going on tonight on Facebook land? Give us 1 second here. We'll get sharing this and we'll get rocking. So get your questions, get your drinks ready, pop your popcorn, all that good stuff. There we go. Hey everybody, what's going on tonight?
Turn my out.
Yeah, me too. Make sure the audio is down. We do have a guest with us tonight that we'll be bringing on here very shortly.
Yeah, and that guest is watching.
That's good. I like that.
I know. I hope she likes our Christmas decorations. These shotgun shells in the back.
It took me a while to put those up, man. I worked hard at that this week.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
Yeah. Got everything decorated and ready to roll.
Tim Cias.
Tim, what's going on, my man?
How is it down in West Virginia? The turkey man.
Okay, a couple more here and I'll be ready to roll. 8 people are on tonight already. Wow, they're lining up. Somebody can see us. That's nice.
Tim Cias.
And my audio needs to be turned down as well.
Yeah, turn your audio down. You yell at me all the time.
I do. I like yelling at you. Okay. One more share. There's got to be a better way to do this.
I know.
It does allow us time to build the audience. Is that your phone dinging again?
I got mine turned down.
Okay, I don't know where that's coming from. That may be coming off a Skype computer. One more. You ready, Danny?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's get rolling. I'm going to get some record going here. Stand by in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back here to 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Mike Adams, sitting in the decorated cabin tonight with Dan DeFaul.
Is it not the Christmas spirit or what?
It is that time of year.
It is. It's awesome.
Songs are in the air.
A song was in the air. The concert last night started it, got it going. You did a wonderful job, might I ask.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. We try.
You did.
We try a little bit. But
Conductor was awesome.
Yeah, it was. It was a really good show last night.
But if people can see on the live stream, you can't see on the podcast, so you got to tune into the live stream.
Yeah.
Our decorations of Christmas hanging.
You like that?
Hanging by the screen with care.
I might have more next week.
Oh, we got to have that.
Well, what do you say? You want to get right into the show?
You know what? Let's get into it because got a great guest on today.
Go ahead and introduce.
Oh, I get to do it?
Yeah.
No, I think you should.
Okay. All right. We have none other than Anna Mitterling, MUCC's Cooperative Coordinator. Anna, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Trying to stay warm.
Yeah, it's a little cold here in Michigan, is it?
A little chilly.
Yeah.
I like it.
A little chilly, but you know we got a viewer on right now on the podcast that he's down in West Virginia and he's complaining it's cold.
How cold is it?
I think he's in the 30s and he's complaining it's cold.
I don't want to hear about it.
Right.
It's in the 20s, I think, here, maybe low 20s. How much snow you guys got over there, Anna? You guys are in the southern central part of Michigan.
I think we have a little over 6 inches.
Okay, we pushed about 8.5 last week, another 2.
Yeah,
So.
I measured on the back porch, and I had, according to the DeFaw yardstick,
Uh-oh.
it was 9.
9 inches, okay.
Right, and I was like, really?
Okay,
And then I got a cover over the back porch.
okay.
Yeah, it didn't like 9 inches of snow.
Did it cave in?
Oh, it caved in, and it's now a crumpled mess.
So you got some work ahead of you this spring to clean up.
No, I cleaned it up while I'm in the process of it.
Okay.
I got to borrow a Sawzall.
Okay, all right, I can make that happen. So tonight we kind of prepped the show and prepped some of the people that are anxiously awaiting Anna to talk a little bit about what you've been involved with CWD. We've had you on one other time. And we lost signal that night.
Well, that's because she was out and about.
Yeah,
calling from
I don't know where.
Right. So, but we got her.
Of Hazlitt.
Okay, Hazlitt. Okay, there you go.
Well, now we've got her. We've got her sitting down, ready to talk with a good signal.
Okay, that's good. Good. And for those of you, our listeners out there and people who are actually watching the live stream right now, that may not know what a MUCC Deer Cooperative Coordinator is, give them a little bit of background on what you do.
Okay, so background of my current job coordinating cooperatives in Michigan. Oh, man. So I've been in this job for just under 3 years, and that position has morphed quite a bit just in that time.
Okay.
I work a lot with landowners, people that are interested in working with their neighbors to manage wildlife, whether that be deer or pheasants are the primary two species, helping them put together a game plan and a structure for how they want to reach out to their neighbors and get them on board with attending meetings and just talking about deer management and seeing what kind of goals they have in common.
Okay.
I've been working on that. A lot of times the guys want to see and shoot older bucks, and so the motive is if they get their neighbors on board and they have similar interests in that realm, they can develop on that and get more people passing younger deer.
Okay.
Also work a lot on habitat management, putting together different processes and tools that can help landowners evaluate their property to determine deer impacts in conjunction with habitat use. There's different tools that are quite simple to use that you can evaluate deer densities and if they're an overabundance in your area or, if it's looking good.
Okay. Now, looking at the bird side of things, I mean, I know you're involved with that. We never really did talk about that a whole lot last time. What do people look to you for when it comes to birds?
Again, trying to build those relationships with neighbors. So pheasant cooperatives are a lot more challenging than deer cooperatives because anywhere in Michigan we have deer in some quantity. Pheasants is another ball game.
Okay.
And so a lot of times that works around getting neighbors interested in anything grassland related, not just pheasants. So whether it's monarch butterflies or bees or pretty flowers, finding ways to get your neighbors interested in anything related to grassland that would inspire them to plant native grasses and wildflowers on their properties.
Okay.
Pheasants don't exist without specific habitat, and so being able to work with neighbors and find out what motivates them to plant grass is really crucial to be able to have corridors and pockets of areas where you can have pheasants.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
And you know what? She must be doing a great job because we just got a post on the Facebook Live that from Heather and Gordy Bogart. She helped the Penny Creek Co-op get started last year, and you're doing great.
Okay. The Penny Creek Co-op.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how many people were coming out to their initial meetings. They have a really good group out there.
Well, now, kind of looking at what we wanted to talk about a little bit tonight, the thing that's really hot right now in the media, whether it's in the outdoor media that we deal with or whether it's just in the everyday news media. I mean, our news station is actually running stories on this with the CWD that's going on here in Michigan. How did you get involved with that side of things?
With the DNR side?
Yeah.
Well, so I worked for DNR as a student assistant when I was in undergrad and undergrad school, and that's actually what got me involved in deer management in general, which led into my research project at Michigan State University studying deer cooperatives. So I've developed a pretty good relationship over time with them, and my project, or my program actually, is funded, a big chunk of it, by DNR. So I do work closely with a lot of the staff, both at the regional and the state level.
Okay. So looking back at school, you kind of got involved with them that way with that. And now with what's going on today, we have seen, just by talking with you back and forth a little bit at different events and what we've seen online via Facebook and your blog with MUCC, that you actually got some hands-on with doing how do you want to say, it's not the necropsies, but when they send the deer heads in, and how that all works. Talk a little bit about how that all kind of started.
Yeah. Well, so again, when I worked for the Wildlife Division several years ago, that was actually in 2008 when that first CWD positive deer in Kent County in the captive facility there was found positive. I was working for the division at that point.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to work in the disease lab and help extract the lymph nodes, which are then processed for the testing of chronic wasting disease.
Okay.
Kind of to make it even more intimate, in 2015, I had just closed on my property that I own here in Mason, And Chad Stewart came to my office and told me that I purchased property in a new CWD zone.
Well, that's some great news. Hey, welcome to my office.
I know. I know. So I live and hunt in an original CWD zone, and then obviously I've been following it very closely ever since as it's been spreading and popping up in new places. And I have a lot of deer cooperatives that are very, very impacted by this disease as they also hunt and live in this expanding CWD area.
So for you, this is really personal.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it affects your every day-to-day hunting. It's in the back of your mind. You're thinking about it.
It's in our backyard.
It's in our literally in your backyard.
Not so far, but it's close.
Well, with it being, but I mean, you're dealing with this. I mean, every time you're out there hunting, I got to imagine that you're actually thinking of, like, okay, I got to look for this. If it's your neighboring properties or what have you.
Yes, and we're utilizing disease tags and working with our neighbors and making sure people are following through and submitting their heads.
Now, are you getting communication with your neighbors in the surrounding area? I mean, what's the mindset there on the ground? I mean, because we hear so much about this in the news, but we really don't know what's going on the ground.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I'm in the southernmost township of the zone, and so there haven't been very much direct impacts other than we have access to free permits to take deer with year-round, essentially.
Okay.
I haven't seen a decline in population or anything like that. They're not heavily being utilized. I think it's something that because we haven't had any positives closer to our area, it's almost like this a second thought, I think, for most people. I'm seeing that in a lot of places. Almost like
it's not here, so I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Right. So okay, so, speaking of that, how's, Mike was talking about the communication amongst that. How is the rest of the state responding when you have communication with these co-ops that you're helping? Is the communication getting out besides CWD? You got the TB area and stuff like that. Is the communication amongst the co-ops to your liking, or could it be better? Or
as far as my involvement with the co-op leaders, I've been really impressed with how in tune and how involved they're getting. Whether they're having special meetings to talk about chronic wasting disease or just being in touch with me, I try to keep them as up to date as I am, which is a little bit ahead of the game. And the response on their end has been phenomenal. One of the things that frustrates me pretty deeply, though, is the general hunting public doesn't really seem to care about chronic wasting disease until it's in their area. And then all of a sudden, they're trying to get on the bandwagon, and they're making a lot of statements, a lot of claims, a lot of assumptions without knowing a whole lot of the details. And so my challenge to your audience in particular is to take some time and research what chronic wasting disease is, using reliable sources, looking at other states and what they've dealt with, and then start sharing an opinion. But we got to make sure we're informed hunters, and we got to make sure that wherever we're hunting, whether it's in Michigan or in another state, that we know, has the disease been found here? Transporting animals of any kind, you got to be following precautions and making sure you're bringing in deboned meat and clean skull caps. You don't want to be adding to the spread of this disease, and it's important that we're aware and we're knowledgeable of it.
Taking that responsibility on people coming back in across state lines, this, that, and the other. I heard recently that people were coming back in from Ohio. And that I don't know if it's the DNR or the state police. I imagine it was the DNR. We're setting up, not on the freeway per se, but on the side roads, travel corridors, people coming back from Ohio with deer. And if they had, it'll be a tree stand or a quad.
Something to tip them off that they were hunting.
They were hunting. They'll pull them over and check them. So I got to feel that the state of Michigan, at least on our borders, are being aggressive about people coming back in with wild game. I
know up in the UP, when I was up there, they were running the PSAs on the radio stations about what you could bring in from Wisconsin, Minnesota, whatever you're doing. But they were heavily using the PSAs to get the word out that what you shouldn't be doing.
Should be doing. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We're bumping up here on our first break. Why don't we take a break? We'll step outside. We'll come back. Let's talk a little bit about your involvement here recently when those deer heads go in, because we know you got quite involved with that one day, and we got some pictures and things that we want to show as well. So we're going to step outside. We'll be right back after this. And for those of you on the live stream, hang on, folks.
You guys can wait while he saves off the show and
post some questions.
Yeah, got any questions for Anna as she's sitting there intently waiting for us?
Just a quick comment here. Jason was talking about the audio issues. We've had a lot of people comment back and forth. We've had some people say that the audio is a little muffled. Some of them say the audio is really good, and everything that we play back at a later date seems to be really good. So I don't know where we're at on that.
Oh, I see. Tammy Delk is watching. By the way, congratulations, Tammy. She Facebooked me and told me she got her first deer today.
Nice. Very nice. Put some more down.
Right? She was I think she's up in the thumb area.
Okay. All right, here we go. Stand by in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back. Second segment of the show, everybody. Sitting here talking a little bit about CWD. Kind of jumping back into this. I want to get into what you were doing with the deer heads, but to kind of step back a little bit with last week or week before last when I was up north, we did a deer cull, or a doe cull, basically. We were trying to do a doe reduction, and we shot 3 does while we were up there, took them in. They cut the heads off at the DNR station. We took them in to have them checked. I know a lot of guys, they don't want to take them in. They don't want to get them tested. They don't want to take the time. And we're in the TB zone where I'm at. To me, I want to make, number one, doggone sure what I'm getting back and putting in my freezer and on my plate later is clean, first of all. But in the CWD zone as well, is there, Anna, are you seeing like a reluctance of people wanting to participate in getting this testing done? I mean, what are you seeing on the ground? What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, whether you're in the TB zone or the CWD zone, getting data in has been a difficult thing. I think from the original core CWD zone response rate for mandatory check is occurring, there is less than a 40% compliance. I don't know about this year, but I know last year it was quite low.
Okay.
And that's not good. I mean, the whole point of this mandatory check is to be surveying and finding out the scope of the problem. Mm-hmm. I think in the TB area, it's a whole nother level because we've been dealing with TB for upwards of 20 years. That's a long time to be dealing with that. And I don't believe it's mandatory in the TB zone either, is it?
No.
It's just recommended.
Right, just recommended.
Which, for the hunting public, TB is something that is known to be, people can get tuberculosis. Mm-hmm. But I know that getting samples up in the TB area has been very challenging.
Okay. Looking at the CWD stuff, when you were at Michigan State University, that's where the heads go, is that right?
Correct, yep.
Okay, so when you went there, were you checking both for CWD and TB, both, or no?
So every deer head gets tested for tuberculosis, but not every head gets tested for CWD. Part of the reason for that is that they're definitely testing in areas where they found positive cases to figure out the extent of it. Mm-hmm. And in addition, any hunter who wants their deer tested for CWD, that head will be tested as well. So the process for, the initial steps that test for both TB and get started in the process for looking for CWD is lymph nodes are pulled out of the deer. Okay. And you can tell if they have, if they need additional testing for tuberculosis by looking at the consistency of those lymph nodes. And if there's, pus or nasty looking things in there, that deer was sick with something, and they'll take the next steps to look at it. There's also specific qualities of that lymph node that would indicate tuberculosis versus other things as well.
Okay, so that's specifically what they're doing is looking at the lymph nodes.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, the difference with CWD is you cannot tell if a deer has CWD by looking at it, even in the disease lab. So what happens is we take the lymph nodes and we chop them up into little pieces and put them in these little test tubes, and they get shaken up and broken into really small pieces, and then they go through an ELISA test, which is something that MSU, so the pictures on here are the DNR disease lab that's at MSU, but the actual testing process of the particulates that are taken out of the lymph nodes are done by the MSU team.
Okay.
They run it through the process that then is able to do, when you see like a suspect CWD positive, that's what MSU determines, and then the suspects get sent over to Iowa, which is the gold standard for CWD testing. And once they've stamped that, yes, it's CWD, then it becomes a confirmed positive.
Okay. So the deer head gets taken off by the DNR at a check station, or you take it off and you take it to a check station. They tag it, bag it, you get your little hunter safety or successful hunter patch and sends you on your way. You get a tag with a number on it. And then that deer head then goes to MSU where they package them all in. And like what we're showing right now on the live stream, they line them up on the floor with the tags, and then each sample gets checked. The biologist cuts for the lymph node, and if it's suspect, at that point they see something that needs to be tested, then they take that and they take that further. But if they find something that they need further testing on to make sure or get a positive confirmed case, they send it, you said, to Ames, Iowa, correct, for the gold standard test?
Yeah, Ames, Iowa.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that's the pictures you're seeing here now. I mean, you see them here on the floor, and they're all lined up. How many did y'all process that day you were there?
Oh my gosh. So the peak of the firearm season, they were processing 1,300 heads a day and not even keeping up.
Okay.
So the floor continually looked like that.
Okay.
Tons and tons of deer. I think Chad Stewart was saying, was it 22,000 heads they've tested this year?
Okay.
I mean, we're talking pretty large numbers of heads.
Okay.
And so as they were testing all those, and he said you were testing a lot of them. I noticed in the photos that some people were wearing special breathing apparatus. Mm-hmm. Okay, was there?
Yeah, that's because of. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish.
Oh, that's just primarily because of tuberculosis. So when you're cutting up the lymph nodes, if there's a positive deer, it could get in the air and you could catch tuberculosis that way. So we have to get screened for TB before being in the lab. And I had to go through this whole fit test where you do all these weird motions and movements wearing the mask to make sure it's secure and tight with your face.
Really?
Yeah, and then depending on, so you can tell which guys were from USDA because they had the full-blown breathing apparatus where they were getting filtered air put into a whole face shield.
Okay.
So those guys are either part of USDA or the veteran guys that are in the lab constantly doing necropsies, and they pretty much live in the lab, so they have pretty fancy equipment.
Now, wait a minute.
The veteran guys get the good stuff.
Yeah. What about the people who come in, they're just there helping to volunteer or whatever? They just give you just like the little tiny thing you put on at the doctor's office?
Well, a lot of the ladies, there's only one girl in there that had the full thing. Honestly, they're not that uncomfortable, and it's kind of nice not having stuff in front of your eyes if you don't need to.
Okay.
So depending on what you're doing, you'll wear the safety goggles. Like if you're dealing with actually cutting the lymph nodes out or you're throwing heads around or whatever, you probably want to have some eye protective gear on. But if you're just sitting there cutting up lymph nodes or you're doing some of the more fine-tuned stuff, it's nice not to have something in front of your vision there. So to have that full-blown face mask, I wouldn't want personally.
Right.
Right.
The one thing I see there that's missing in these photos is antlers. There's no antlers. So now, is that when they come into are they small? They're probably smaller bucks. They're not, anything that's got, a nice headgear on them. So the people that want those, they can. Oh, right there's one in the bottom corner there, actually by a picture of you. I think, is that you that's in the room there, kneeling over, checking one of the deer heads?
No, that's Melinda.
Okay.
She's one of the main staffers there at the lab.
Okay. All right.
So, if you are a hunter and you want to get your head tested for tuberculosis, but you have a deer you want to mount, the DNR will work with you, whether you want a European mount or fully caped. They'll give you a special tag, and you can take it to your taxidermist and then bring whatever's necessary back. And some of the newer CWD zone, there's a taxidermist, or some taxidermists are actually trained to extract lymph nodes. So you can go that route and have your lymph nodes
Oh,
extracted
okay.
there.
You know, that's a good thing that DNR is doing, is to help and work with these the hunters to get out there, and also working with the hunters. We got a comment from Heather and Gordy. They say we need to make it more convenient for the hunters to get tested. People don't want to drive 20 miles to check their deer, and also make it quicker.
That's a complaint that I've had last year?
Last year, when you shot your does, I think it was.
Yeah, I was coming home, and I believe, I'm trying to remember what day it was. That would have been Saturday. It had been Saturday, and I was coming home in the middle of the day, and the DNR check stations, I passed 3 of them on a Saturday, and they were only open at certain times, like a 4-hour window.
Yeah.
I know it's due to budgets and all that, but there's got to be an easier way. Is that something they're looking at?
Yeah. It is. I would expect some pretty big things to be coming out for this next fall, especially with the extent we're finding CWD closer to Mount Palm County, Kent County area.
Okay, good. Well,
I know that they've already started doing head drop boxes. Is one thing. If you're not in a mandatory check situation, I really encourage my co-op guys to collect heads, stick them in a deep freezer, and when you get an opportunity, take a whole load of heads over.
Okay.
You just got to make sure that there's tags identifying the hunter of that animal.
Okay.
There's things that can be done, and in CWD core areas, they've tried to be as good as they can at making it as convenient as possible. And you're correct. I mean, there's a lot of staff time involved in making that available, but I definitely foresee some pretty big changes coming to simplify the process.
Okay, I just running something through my head here. I was just thinking as you're talking about, and that's what we've done at our camp is, they'll kind of wait for the end of the week, then they'll take them all and have them all checked at one time. Now I know when you go to the check station, at least here in Michigan, they take the head, they take the tag, they scan it, or they put it in on their phone. They got like an app on their phone. They put them in, and send that in with your driver's license number. But you get your tag back to transport that game home. Now, if that's the case, and you want to collect these heads and then freeze them and send them in, you've got to have the tag to go with you to the processor if you haven't done it at a processor, and then you got to make sure to get that tag back to put with that head. I see a problem somewhere along the way of somebody getting caught with either a carcass with no head and no tag, or heads with no tag, and somebody say you've got illegal deer. So maybe, this is just a thought off the top of my head, and it's something maybe we could suggest to them, is having an additional printed out tag for a test tag, that has that same information on it. Is that possible?
Yeah. I think that's a really good recommendation. I don't see why it wouldn't be. Also, along those same lines, I think it'd be good for the DNR to clarify what needs to be tagged. Because typically my understanding is you just keep the tag with the head.
Right. That's the other thing.
Another question from Tim Cias. He's asking, Anna, does your organization share all your results with other states of what you are finding?
Yeah. Also, to clarify, I work for Michigan United Conservation Club, so I don't have results.
right. No, but is
state of Michigan?
Yeah, are they going to share them?
Yes. So DNR. One thing I've learned about the deer world in the professional realm, like agency, kind of MyRole, even QDMA, it's a pretty small community that actually communicates quite a bit. And I've had the privilege to get to know several deer biologists from other states. And they all keep pretty well connected, even at that level, and what's going on in each other's areas. So, yeah, a lot of this information is shared, especially if it's requested. And they have annual events where different agencies, it's usually broken up by regions, but they get together and they talk about, what are different concerns and trends and challenges that are coming up and what can we do to make it better. So that kind of conversation and communication and information sharing is definitely occurring and will continue to.
Okay, good. Tom and Jen from Nature's Best Deer Sense. Everyone should have their deer tested for CWD regardless of the area you hunt in. The state needs to test for it from different areas to find out where it is.
Find out how widespread the problem is.
Right?
Yeah.
I agree.
Now, from what you've been hearing on the ground, and I know you don't mention any names and pinpoint people and pin them to the ground, but do they think that CWD's been here for a while and it's just not been found, and now we're just starting because we're doing testing for other things with these cervid game farms and their mandatory testing. Is that why we're seeing it now, or do you think this has crept in through other means and it's just now coming into the state?
That's a really good question, and it's a very commonly asked question. So I was at the CWD symposium that DNR had, and they invited pretty much every state that has chronic wasting disease and the professionals that have been helping manage and track that over time come and present on their state and what's been going on, as well as a very in-depth overview of new research that's going on and different conclusions that have been made. And one thing that all the professionals that were at that event agreed on is that, we don't know exactly when this disease became present in the states that it's in, but it's a new disease, and that's proven in how it's being found. And once it's found, how it's being tracked. So in Wisconsin, for example, when it first came out in 2002, they were testing very heavily, and they were finding positives. But the scary thing is that they're barely testing at all, and they're finding more positives now than when they were testing heavily.
Okay.
So that disease, regardless of when it arrived, is spreading and is growing, and the density of that disease is increasing.
Ah, okay, yeah, it's gaining a foothold, and less testing, more positive is not the way you want it to go.
Right.
The thing I'm hearing too from people is, okay, we've tested 22,000 deer. We've only had 30 cases. I think, are we up to 30 now? Is that right? Or roughly around 30?
30 was the updated number as of December 6th, but I guarantee we're above that.
Okay. Now, they're saying, I kind of lost track of thought. Okay, yeah, we've tested 20,000 plus deer, and we've only got 30. The percentage is so low. Why do we need to worry about it? I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Well, so part of the reason to worry about it is, at least in the original core in the Lansing area, is the prevalence rate is really low, and we're pretty confident that it's low just because we've been testing for a few seasons now, and the prevalence rates aren't jumping out, and we're not finding pockets of big numbers of deer or anything like that have the disease. And so the reason to keep testing at that level and with that specificity is to determine that, is this something that's been here for a while? What kind of levels are we finding? And because it's been low, that's really good news, and we want to keep it that way. Now we're getting into Montcalm County and the surrounding area, and we're finding huge increases in the numbers of deer. It'll be interesting to see what the final season conclusions are going to be for those numbers. That's a different situation because of how quickly we found it and how many are popping up. It's pretty likely that, it is, that disease is there, and it's something that's going to be dealt with.
Okay.
In the other CWD area, we might be able to keep it at bay. We don't know yet. Only time will tell. But in Montcalm County area and surrounding, that's going to be something that's going to be dealt with for a while.
Okay. Well, the map that we're showing right now, this is for free-ranging deer. Am I correct? Because you're able to see it there. Okay. Because I know up in Mecosta County, didn't they have an instance up there with a captive deer? Is that right?
Yep. There are 2 captive deer that's still under investigation. But actually, as of press release went out, was it Wednesday? Tuesday or Wednesday, there's another positive found in a facility in Mecosta County as well.
Okay. Well, looking at the map, it looks like a really hot pocket right there, right around Montcalm County. Whereas you go down into Ionia, Clinton, and Ingham, and Eaton County, right there in that little four county area, it almost looks like a line, almost like it's a growing line instead of a cluster. Is there any significance to that, of the difference of being a cluster and being in a line, or am I just trying to read something into it that's not there?
There's not enough data to draw conclusions on that, I would say. I think the best we can do is kind of speculate at this point. So if you think about it, the highest testing densities are going to be kind of in the core middle areas of those zones.
Okay.
And then as new positives are found, they increase surveillance and try to get hunters to be more involved in those spots as well.
Okay.
Right. And in Montcalm in Kent County, aren't they the 2 highest counties deer are taken for the hunt?
Traditionally, Montcalm is one of the biggest deer killer counties in the state. They harvest about 10,000 deer a year.
Right. Yeah, that's like our number one.
One of our densities are pretty high of hunters and deer.
Yeah. So, they're surveilling that, and that's one of our biggest counties. We're getting all the deer taken from for our hunt. Like she said, 10,000. So,
okay.
And along those lines of getting them tested, and you were talking about finding a place. Tammy says that the Algonac DNR is closed for the checking due to lack of funding. The sign said the closest place she now has to go to is Southfield.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, like I said, was the funding, And, I tell you what, let's take a break. Let's step outside. Let's come back. Let's talk a little bit about that, about the funding that kind of goes into that, and, maybe the future and where we're going to go from there. So we're going to step outside. We're going to take our next break, and we'll be right back after this. And Danny can entertain the folks on the
All right.
while we're sitting here talking.
Don't you laugh.
It's all good stuff,
That's right. It's all good stuff. It's all very informative, and it's just, the word's got to get out there. So that's interesting. They had a kind of like a forum where they've invited everybody else to come and talk from other states and say, hey, what's going on? How do you guys handle it? That's interesting.
I think it was really smart. It hasn't been done in a while either, so it was good to get all those agencies and states together, and universities doing research too, just to have that kind of update.
Did that just happen recently?
Yeah, that was the beginning of October.
Is that recorded somewhere, or?
You hit my recent pet peeve button.
Okay, let me hit it.
Remember, we're still recording here now.
We've had it all up on the YouTube channel for DNR in November, and it still isn't there.
Okay.
Okay. I was just wondering, because something like that, that'd be great information to get out, and actually, I'd like to see it.
Absolutely. Okay.
Because I'd like to hear what the other states are doing.
Well, I'll send you the link right now of where you'll be able to find it once they post it.
All right, cool.
Which is a good link to promote in general anyway, just because all of Michigan CWD information is there.
And we got it.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Stay by 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back. Third segment of the show. We are rocking along talking about CWD and how it's affecting our deer herds here in Michigan. What people think about it, what we can do about it, all this kind of good stuff with Anna Mitterling, MUCC's Deer Cooperative Coordinator.
We got a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead, fire away.
First, from Tim, is there any type of treatment that can be given to the deer while they are still alive? I'm assuming when they have CWD.
I think,
no.
Is New York experimenting with that? Or is that with TB? I'm trying to remember. It's somewhere in New York State. I don't remember what university it was. Have you heard anything about that, Anna?
There's been some soft research that's been done. I don't know what conclusive there's all been. I do know that one thing that is pretty solid is that it doesn't really matter if the deer is sick or healthy. They're still susceptible to getting chronic wasting disease. And it's not like you can boost their immune system and then, like the flu or whatever, you'll be less likely to get it or it won't hit you as bad. If you get chronic wasting disease, it's going to kill you if something else doesn't first. So I get really nervous when people talk about supplementing vitamins and minerals for deer to prevent CWD when actually drawing them into one place where they can share saliva over a mineral lick is kind of counterproductive.
Right.
But they'll continue doing research. I mean, I don't know what kind of things they'll come up with, but as of right now, there's nothing concrete.
Looking at those types of things, so there is active research that's going on, trying to figure out. Well, we kind of already know what the cause is, but how to maybe stop this prion, or it's a protein, right? A prion's a protein, right? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it's a misfolded protein.
Okay. So it's not a living thing. It's something you can't get rid of or burn or destroy, from what I understand. It resides on the ground, and whether it comes out in fecal matter or urine or saliva, and it can stay on the ground for years. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, they've documented it being there for over 20 years.
Okay. So this is something we're just not going to, okay, we'll shoot these deer that have this or carrying this, and we're going to get rid of it, because that's not going to be the case. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
And kind of what the concern is that the longer a deer has the disease, the more prions it's shedding. And so the sooner we can get the deer that have it off the landscape, the less of an impact they're going to have. And actually carcasses can be a huge propagator of chronic wasting disease too in those prions, because it's there and then scavengers can take it and spread it. And like I said, you can't tell if the deer has CWD or not just by looking at it most of the time. In fact, of the deer that have been found positive in Michigan so far, only one actually looked sick. The rest looked perfectly healthy.
Really? Okay. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Mm-hmm.
Not like a blue tongue thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see pictures, on the internet. Everything's on the internet's true, right? But
right.
We see deer that look like they've got what they've told us chronic wasting disease leads to. But you're saying the ones that are being brought in are people that bring them in for mandatory check in that area, and to them it looks like a normal, healthy deer.
Right, or even outside of required areas. I know a couple of the deer that were found, they were found just because hunters wanted to get their heads checked, and they end up being a positive.
Okay. So
what's the talk that you're hearing, since you got your ears in there and you're listening to all this stuff going on? I know this is happening down in the Lower Peninsula, but what's the thoughts on the Upper Peninsula? Anything just worried about coming across from Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's terrifying. A couple years ago, there was a positive farm, I believe, less than 20 miles from the border. That's definitely not a matter of if, it's a matter of when for the UP, unfortunately. The good news, at least in the UP, is deer densities are quite lower, and it's going to take a lot longer to spread.
Okay, so looking at long term, what's going to be the end game here? I mean, we've heard everything from this is going to completely destroy deer hunting in Michigan. I mean, there was an article in is either the Free Press or the Detroit News, one or the other, a couple weeks ago. Is this the end of deer hunting as we know it? Which I don't think it is.
Well, Colorado's been dealing with it for a long time.
Yeah, I think, when was it first found? 1967-ish? Around there, 68, back in the late 60s?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so
one of their research pens.
They've been dealing with this for 30 plus years, actually 40 now.
They have. Yeah, something to think about though. When we're comparing other states, is Colorado's mule deer densities are quite low. Mm-hmm. And so we got to take that into effect too. But I think, especially if we can keep deer densities in check, which honestly in a lot of Michigan, deer densities are too high. You look at tree lines that you see along farm fields, and you look at the impacts, the browse lines that deer are making, that's indicative of a problem of high deer densities where they're eating themselves out of house and home. Mm-hmm. So regardless of CWD, I think it behooves us well to take into account what the impacts on the habitat are and what the sustainability of that means for our deer.
Okay.
I totally would agree with that.
Well, looking at deer densities, that's one thing that depends on which side of the fence you're on. I've battled this with a lot of people, talking about shooting does, not shooting does, shooting older bucks or not shooting older bucks. We've had Lincoln Roan on from Michigan's Let Them Go, Let Them Grow, pushing APRs. We find, or you're finding, not we, I'm not involved in the research, but from what I've heard, you guys are finding more cases of the CWD in older deer, older bucks. Is that right?
No, actually, what did Chad say on Thursday? It's more, just off the top of my head, it's more like 50-50. So
okay.
A lot of the bucks that were found in Montcalm County were actually a year and a half old.
Yes, that's okay. That's exactly what he said.
So we're finding it in young deer. We're also finding it in older deer. Older deer are more likely to have it if you look at like the percentages of 1.5-year-olds versus the percentages of 4.5-year-olds to have it, just because they've been around and they've been interacting with more deer over time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There'll be more older deer are definitely more likely to have it. When you talk about the long term of CWD, it's going to mean that the older deer, once they get to 3.5, 4.5-year-old, most of those deer are going to have CWD.
Okay. So, okay, let's play devil's advocate here and look ahead. With QDMA's cornerstones of what they push, is that going to fit into maintaining this, trying to corral this problem, or are we going to have to rethink the way we hunt deer as far as what age structures we're going after?
Yeah, I'll send you another link here as we're talking too. So QDMA in response requested by the Michigan QDMA guys, asked National to put together a recommendation document of how to manage CWD from a QDMA perspective. And he does talk a lot about in there, it's okay to let bucks get a little bit older, but once they get to that 3.5, 4.5-year-old mark, you're going to have to be more diligent about taking them out and getting them tested.
Okay.
The caveat being, if you want to pass younger deer, you have to get some does out because it's very crucial for CWD to decrease those densities. And so if you want a little advantage of being able to see some more mature deer in the landscape, kind of the second part of that is we have to be able to get those densities down.
Okay.
Right, and on that call, Kip Adams was there, and that's one of the exact things he pointed out was the difference between Pennsylvania and Michigan. He was shocked that the difference in the amount of does taken. In Pennsylvania, they take a lot more does than a Michigan would take, and he finds that it kind of like a telltale sign is, first thing you might want to go after is the does.
Well, that's been part of the problem here in Michigan is the QDMA push. It's the hunting heritage here in Michigan has always been, shooting the bucks. It's the old school versus new school mentality and education, trying to get this word out. And the people we talk to, Danny, I mean, we deal with this every time we're out.
And there was other comments on this call from other places where they've tried to perpetuate taking more does, like at a buck pole and stuff, and they were told, well, we don't hang does on our buck poles.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
It's like...
And honestly, I can understand that. I mean, it really wasn't that long ago when we didn't have high deer densities, and harvesting a doe was taking out the deer that were making the deer for the next year. And so I can understand from that standpoint, especially when talking to the older guys, it is unethical in their mind to harvest does. And that's something that simply isn't going to change for people who grew up with that worldview, because when they started hunting, that was a reality, and I have to respect that. I think when you look at some of the younger people, I think it's just selfish to not harvest does.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. We had it was last week. We had a caller, a viewer, say, please convince me to shoot a doe because he's having trouble shooting does because he's afraid if he shoots a doe, the buck's going to be right behind it.
Right.
So he was fighting in his mind that if I shoot this deer, that big buck is going to be right there.
And it's tough for the guys who. It's a derogatory term. I don't want to say weekend warrior, but the guys who only have, maybe say they've only got 2 weekends to get out and hunt because that's what their work schedule allows. How do you convince a person like that that wants to shoot a buck,
right,
to shoot that doe and possibly blow the hunt? So
you got it, and that's one of the big things and I can totally understand that because when we're out there during deer season, we got those does running around. Estrus starting to kick in, the rut's starting to kick in. You see a doe running. My 8-point that I shot was following a doe. So I was like, okay, so if I would have shot the doe, it would have been the double-edged sword. But right now, I can't shoot any does in the UP where I'm at.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. I'm hoping that next year we can start to shoot some does because I would really like to get. Because we figured it out that we're. Because we were discussing in our blinds, okay, what, I've got 5 in front of me, well, I got 6 in front of me, I got 7, and we're texting back, so it's live happening, and we're 40 acres apart.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so that's 20, 30, that's 30 deer, like, boom.
Right.
So, whoa. So.
Well, and something I like to point out is that, if you want to get that mature deer, which there's a trend heading in that direction of guys that want to get the bigger bucks, do yourself a favor and take a couple does out. Maybe take a buck break, have that tag in case you see a shooter, but take a buck break. Just let that mentality kind of set aside for a bit, because if you take some does out, it's only going to add more foraging options for your bucks. If they go through the winter with better nourishment, they're going to come into the spring stronger and healthier, and that excess energy is going to go into antler development.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's lots of different ways to skin the cat and promote antlerless harvest. But you do, regardless, have to think longer term about your management goals and what you want to see accomplished, and understand it's a lot more complicated than just passing a young buck or getting out more often.
Yeah, I learned so much this past spring with the deer browse study that I was part of, that you were up at Anchor Creek's Cooperative doing that. And it's really opened my eyes this year, and I'm using that as a tool to try to educate other guys in the area that we hunt. Is, okay, so, this is part of the problem. We've got too many does, not enough browse. If we're not going to reduce the population this way, that's going to put more stress on our bucks. Not to mention that they're breeding in third cycle, so these bucks are running for 3 months chasing these does, and then they try to, replenish their energy, and there's nothing there to replenish from because everything's frozen and locked down, and there's very little food source to begin with anyway.
Exactly, and then down here in the southern, it's not as bad. Mm-hmm. But when you start getting up by you and you start getting up into the UP, and that starts happening. Now, deer densities are a little bit lower, but in pockets they are a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm in one of those pockets, and it's like one of those things. It's like, okay, I can see where this could go really bad, really fast.
Need a little micromanaging.
Right. I'm hoping next year I can start to do that. So,
uh-huh.
And I've done that before, but it's been so long since we've been able to shoot a doe.
Okay, I tell you what, let's take our last break. When we come back, we'll kind of wrap things up here on this discussion and see where we land on this. So we're going to step outside, take our next break. We'll be right back after this. For those of you on the live stream, hang with us for just a second.
And I'll do some more entertaining.
I hope everybody's got their Christmas shopping done.
I know.
Anna, you got yours done?
Well, see, I don't really like shopping, so yep.
Oh,
I know what she did.
Keyboard shopper.
Hello, Amazon. You know what? I tell you what. It was the week the UPS, FedEx, and everybody showed up at our door, and hey, we're done.
Yeah, right on.
Is there anything?
It's amazing.
Is there anything you want to cover in this last segment that you want to talk about?
Well, you had mentioned at the end of the session before about talking a little bit more about funding.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So we can talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Even just having a little overview of where licenses dollars go versus other funding sources for DNR.
Okay.
And then you can talk a little bit about some money that the legislature
Spit that out.
Contributed to DNR for CWD stuff.
Okay.
So I can talk about that a little bit.
All right. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back. Last segment of the show. I do have a quick question here from Tom and Jen of Nature's Best Deer Sense. Anna, is there any progress being made in live testing for deer of CWD?
Yeah, so at the NRC meeting that just took place on Thursday, which, little plug, if you weren't able to make that event, on Michigan United Conservation Club's Facebook page, they have the recorded live stream of the Natural Resources Commission meetings, and the Michigan Department of Agriculture state vet was there talking about the most recent CWD case, and that is something that they're pushing and working on, following the research that is going right now in live testing. Okay. Because in a deer farm situation, live testing is extremely valuable. In the wild side of things, I don't think there's a ton of value for that other than maybe in a research situation.
Okay. Well, speaking of funding for this that's being put into this, okay, we've got our our tag dollars, our hunting tag dollars that go into the outdoors. Is there any other money that's coming in for some of this testing? Because we've heard a couple instances here, people talking about, well, you know what, facilities are closed down, so I have to travel further to get my deer tested. And, I've run into instances like that as well. Where's the funding from this testing coming from? And is it looking better, or are we looking at it being worse down the road?
So it is only going to get more complicated. So even just from a lab standpoint, the ability to keep up with the heads that were coming in was very difficult. So being able to have that situation figured out. But funding, I think, for DNR has been a struggle. It's not as bad as it was before. I think it's important that as hunters we're able to communicate where funding for conservation comes from, because it is from hunters. It's not tax dollars. The vast majority of DNR's operating budget comes from license sales, and then they're able to take the number of licenses that are sold, and that goes into this criteria towards this pot of money that the federal government has from Pittsburgh-Robertson's money, which is that taxation on firearms and ammunition, goes into a big pot and is distributed to state agencies based on the number of licenses that are sold in that state.
Okay.
So PR money and license dollars are the primary funders of DNR. Now, this year we were awarded $1 million by the legislature to help with CWD testing and surveillance. Okay. And that is something that looks like they'll get again next year, if not hopefully increase, just because they did use the $1 million pretty easily, right, for all the work they've been doing for CWD.
Did that money come from federal monies or state monies?
That came from state monies. Okay,
so the state of Michigan was funding that extra $1 million. Coming. I assume that come out of the general fund. That was tax dollars.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Looking down the road, for the average hunter out there that may be listening right now or might listen to this later on or stumble across this live stream that we send out later, what can that average guy do? I mean, he's like, okay, look, I'm hunting state land. I don't own private land. I hunt state land in the middle of this zone. I know I got to go get my deer tested, but in the grand scheme of things, what's the best thing a person can do besides having their deer tested? I mean, is it basically just communicating to other people or asking questions or talking to a DNR official? What do you suggest they do?
Be informed. Information's power. Knowledge is great. I think that ignorance and misinformation between hunters only cultivate more animosity, more division, more complicated situations, and more arguing that's unnecessary. I think a good conversation that has different points of view is of value, but it has to be from people who are educated and have a true understanding of what they're talking about, not some article they read on Facebook. So I think legitimately being informed, being critical of your own perspective, and looking at different angles and different sides of things only is going to help you as a resource steward, but also as someone that converses with fellow hunters and resource users.
Okay, so a guy might, like you said, Facebook. We all know everything on Facebook's true, right?
Right, absolutely.
But a lot of the problems I've heard from people that they don't trust the government. They don't trust scientists to tell them because everybody comes from an agenda. I guess at the end of the day, the way I've learned is I've put my boots on the ground. I've went to seminars. I've went to deer necropsies. And I know everybody can't do that, but I like you said, information's power. If the more information you get and the more you glean from it and sift out the chaff and really look at what's there and make an informed decision, I think that's probably the right direction to go. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Danny, anything else?
I'm just looking through the comments here. Heather and Gordy, they couldn't keep up, but they want more deer heads. And then, what's this one say? He just got his results 3 days ago from November. But they'll keep on working, and they'll catch up eventually.
Well, I turned my deer head in. The deer we shot was turned in on... We came back Sunday afternoon. We stopped, got our deer checked. He said they'd be picked up Tuesday, and I checked today. I actually forgot. He said they'd be done Friday.
Okay.
Today's Sunday, and I'm like, oh, hey, here's my tag in my wallet, and I forgot to check. So I got online real quick and checked. And another thing too that I found out because I didn't get the tag for the second one.
Right.
I forgot to get it from the DNR official. But on the Michigan site, you can also put in your driver's license number because that's recorded with it.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll cross-reference it that way.
Oh, good.
So my deer was 5.5 years old. One of them was. It came back. Both deer were negative. Another deer that was shot on the property by one of our guests was originally judged at 6.5 and wound up being 9.5. That's what they classified it as.
Wow.
Later. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there. My other deer that I had checked, he said was either a 1.5-year-old deer or it was a late fawn, late breeding 2.5-year-old.
Right.
Because of the size. It came back as 3.5. So I don't know. I mean,
well, they went. They're doing a field site test, and
right.
Then when it gets in, they make the final call. Anna, is there anything you talked about being informed? Is there anything the DNR, you guys, and with all the outdoor shows coming out, do they plan to be out there talking about it with the people out there, or is there any plans to do something of that nature?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what DNR's plans are. Again, going to MUCC.org, if you look at the blogs, I've had several blogs that I've written on chronic wasting disease. I definitely will be here to answer questions and continue just leading the cause in that realm as far as I go.
Right. I think
a couple things. Oh, go ahead.
I think it would be. I think they will be, because DNR is usually at all the sports shows. They usually have a booth.
Yeah.
And I know the Michigan Outdoor Rama, the MUCC's there. That way they get people that can actually, where they're walking by. We've talked to the biologists.
Sure.
That's how I got into the quality forestry program. We talked to that guy.
Oh, that's right.
Remember?
Yeah. Yep.
So.
We did get one more quick question here from Rob Lee, a listener of ours from out east. He asked about roadkill deer. Are road deer kill tested?
They are currently, at least in the Anne County area. I think they've been doing some testing out in MUCC County. I don't know if that's something that's going to continue, just because they haven't found any positives off that, and that is a big investment to have a truck and a person on full time for each of the areas to continue doing that.
I tell you what, it wouldn't be I guess as the guy in me, the hunter, I see a couple going up the road to the highway. Mm-hmm. I guess if I knew I could pull over, cut it off, and put it in the bag and ship it somewhere without...
You can't possess it, though, without a tag.
Well, that's the thing, so that would be the gray area, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to help by... Well, there's, so...
Yeah. And that's some of the little nuances probably that eventually, hopefully, will start getting worked out, and people can make it easier for people to send something in to get tested.
Yep. And if anybody has any questions for Anna, Anna, where can we get a hold of you?
On Facebook or at Mitterling@mucc.org.
There you go.
There you go.
Michigan United Conservation Club.
Do we have a couple minutes or two other things I want to hit on real quick?
Sure, absolutely.
The floor is yours.
Yes. Are you sure you want to keep that statement out there?
Don't worry, we got the button to cut it off.
Dang it. So one for Gordy and Heather, just so you guys know and everyone else, DNR did run out of test kits, and there's only one place in the world they can be ordered in Norway.
Are you
and
serious?
Apparently they got held up in customs or something, and so that was a big reason for the massive delay that occurred.
I heard that.
Okay, he in that meeting he said they ran out of them, and there was it was because there's only one place in the world that makes them.
One place in the world that they can get them right now, yeah. Wow. Seems like a cornered market to me.
You think? Wow. Take stock in that.
If anyone wants a get-rich-quick thing and you can figure out how to do a testing kit, you could be out for a bunch of money in your pocket.
Right. Wow.
So the other question that I had messaged to me was along the lines of seeing 26 deer out in front of them. They hunt 40 acres, 7 or 1.5-year-old bucks. It is in a county where there's high deer densities. And I was asked, how many does should be harvesting based on that? And that's a hard question to answer because there's so many factors that go into habitat and surrounding area. Anything deer focused, when you're looking at your hunting, when you're planning habitat management projects, it's really important to look at that aerial view perspective, that landscape level, to see what kind of opportunities might be there. Mm-hmm. Based on the county that it's in, I would feel very confident taking a few does out. no problem whatsoever. But if you want to have a really good idea of how many does you want to start targeting, first off, you want to start working with your cooperative and compile observation data. What kind of numbers are you guys seeing collaboratively across a larger area throughout the entire season? I would love to see trail camera surveys being run late summer when there's still spots on the fawns, the bucks are in velvet, you can uniquely identify individual buck deer. And then to kind of top it off, being able to spend your early spring before the leaves come out looking at browse impacts on your woodlot. Those three things right there, you can be very, very confident in your doe harvest recommendations. And it sounds like a lot of work, but if you have a cooperative in your area and you guys can kind of do some sampling together, the effort will pay off tenfold for you. So I'd highly recommend kind of going that route. And as far as 26 deer go, if 7 were 1.5-year-old bucks, I don't know if other bucks were out there, but say half of those deer were does. If you harvest 33% of the population of does every year, you're going to maintain a steady population.
Right. And that
harvesting 33% of what you see, if it's a pretty typical observation situation there. So that would be my recommendation, would be to harvest 33% at least. In a CWD area, I would probably double that.
Yep, exactly.
Just
and
throwing numbers out there.
No, that's good. And also, they mentioned the number. I saw this amount of deer at this time on 40 acres. That's nice to know. You've got 26. It's the others that you can't see at the exact moment. Mm-hmm. So you have 26, and I'm going to say plus some.
Yeah, well, and we did the same thing last year.
I also don't know what the habitat looks like in other areas too. I mean, there's definitely times where the deer in that area congregate in your spot. Now, I don't want every hunter to think that's them, because that's probably a minority situation.
Right.
But that's why it's so important to understand what's around you and what other things might be attracting deer to other places. Google
Maps does a great job at aerial photography that you can see the surrounding areas.
Right, within reason, because
it's free.
It's free, and now my landscape has totally changed.
Exactly.
See, now I've had my property logged. And now this will be the first full winter, and then we're going to go into next spring. And like Anna said, I'll probably put out my cameras when I go up there in the spring, and then I'll probably pull those in the summer. Mm-hmm. So I'll have that opportune time. I'll make sure I put a camera out.
Anna, you said the 1/3 just to maintain population. That's something I've learned this year. Last year we shot 24 does off our property. We've got 640 acres that we manage in square mile, roughly. And people in our surrounding area are like, wow, you guys, you dropped the hammer on so many. Well, you know what? We didn't do enough, because we see as many deer this year, if not more, than we did last year. And this year our target was 30, and we're about halfway there, unfortunately, right now.
And like you said before, you can also tell in your plantings, when you planted your crops, they didn't even have time to grow.
No, they just completely mowed them down. Our deer browse, the browse we have is non-existent. They're eating, plants that are not preferred. Learned that from Anna at the deer browse study last spring. So, those things that we're seeing, starvation's ugly, folks. And disease as well. So,
it's not pretty.
We need to kind of get this back in order.
Kind of a fun tip, if you're out planting food plots, put a little deer exclosure on your food plots. Sometimes guys will think that their fertilizer's off, or it's just bad soil or something.
Yep.
But typically it's the deer pounding it before it can even grow. So put a little fence out there, a little covering, so the deer can't get to it, and you can really see the impact your deer are having on your food plots.
That is so important for the mental aspect, because a lot of guys do that. They'll go out, they'll do the food plot, and they're like, oh man, it's not growing.
Happened to me this year with mine. My grow cage inside was 3-4 foot tall, and everything outside was dirt.
Right. So you knew exactly what they're doing, and it is working. So don't get discouraged. But like you said, if you have a grow cage, they can't get to it, and you can see that and go, oh yeah, it's growing,
it's working.
Yeah. I just got a lot of browse going on.
Well, I'll tell you what, Anna, it's been very insightful tonight. A lot of information's been given. We could talk about this for probably 7 or 8 more shows, tell you the truth. There's just so much information on this stuff that we're still learning. We appreciate what you're doing. You know, you're doing the work out there. You got boots on the ground. And we just can't say thank you enough. And thank you for taking time out of pre-Christmas week to sit down and talk to us here for an hour, hour and a half. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
And hopefully Santa Claus is very good to you and your family this year.
Did you end up getting one?
Yeah, did you get a deer this year?
Did you get a deer?
Not yet, but I've been waiting for snow to be on the ground.
Okay.
And now that it's here, it's just finding time where family's not here so I can go out.
There you go.
All right.
Well,
Yep.
I tell you, good luck to you for the rest of the season. And like I said, thank you for what you're doing for the Michigan deer hunters out here. And, you know, and this information is not for Michigan. There's things that you've said tonight that can be applied across the board in other states as well. So we really appreciate you taking the time.
The formula is the same.
Yep, absolutely.
My pleasure, and thank you guys for all you do.
All right, we're going to let you go.
Just
You
don't
have a
hang up
Merry
yet.
Christmas. So, yeah, we're going to sign off
Okay.
here on the live stream. So that'll do it for us this week, folks. As we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe until next week on the Up North Journal. And for those of you on the live stream, if you got a question, fire them in quick before we let Anna go. We had a lot of good questions tonight. I appreciate everybody out on the live stream.
Absolutely. Thank you on the
Chiming in.
live stream for chiming in and giving us feedback. Heather and Gordy and Tom and Jen and Tim down in West Virginia.
Rob over in New Jersey.
So,
Yep, a lot of good stuff. So give it a few more seconds here if you guys got anything.
all right. And then other than that, we'll be on next week. We'll be on Saturday morning. So
That's right.
you can wake up and have coffee with us.
That's right. What time? 9?
9-ish.
9-ish. So that's going to be on the 23rd since
Yep.
Sunday night's going to be Christmas Eve. And actually the following Sunday probably be or Saturday be the same way, being New Year's Eve. So we're going to do 2 shows on Saturday, back to back.
I didn't get the Saturday option with the coffee.
You can come back. No, not this week. Next week, though. But we can send some coffee that way if you like.
Right, you know, so coffee and donuts. So, all right, everybody on the live stream, we're gonna break off here, and we'll see you next week.
All righty. Y'all take care now.